developing and helping people reach their full potential and advancing this work around diversity, equity, inclusion, and access for all.
Access. And you talk about access, which is a specific call out that is not typical in many industries. Tell us why it's important for you.
And I'll tell you, Gloria, this was a big debate about whether we included it. It was recommended by members, frontline members, or task force members of our first group that worked on, started out in this work, and suggested that if everybody in your organization, regardless of age or race or sexual orientation or location or role or anything, if there's anybody in your organization that doesn't have access to mentors, to leadership, to training, to resources, to words of encouragement of saying, you got this, if anybody doesn't have access to that, they are limited in realizing that potential. So I'll give you a really easy example of how we got to that is when we were toying around with this. Remember when scooters first came and you said, wow, scooters are a form of transportation that could be now accessible to people who don't otherwise have transportation. What does it do to open up the job market or where somebody can work? And what a great thing. Except, what do you have to rent a scooter? You have to have a credit card. So now I have this population. There is this tool, there's this resource that's out there, but the people who need it, it's not accessible to them. So we wanted to be really intentional about making sure that everybody in our organization has access to everything that can possibly help them reach their full potential, whether that's personally or professionally. That access is important.
It's telling that that awareness came as a result of listening to your own team members, your frontline workers. How did that happen?
So when we first began this work, we asked for a volunteer task force, and we had huge, crazy, excited response to this. And we had to whittle it down because you can't really get a lot done with 100 people in a meeting. We whittled it down to a group of 16 people that literally
down to 16.
We whittled it down to 16. And those 16 acted as essentially a proxy for the organization. So they represented different states, different roles, different levels within the organization, different ethnicities, just a variety of different population to, again, serve as sort of a proxy for the rest of our 5,600 associates. And that group included frontline associates as up through, senior leadership. And it came out of that group, and we made that recommendation from that task force. When we actually published that, it got a lot of questions because it doesn't roll off the tongue in the same way as DEI or DEIB. There's different naming conventions that organizations have used. But for us, we felt like we actually had a long conversation about it and said, it is a little confusing and we have to explain what it means and people don't always know. So is it diluting our message or is it enhancing our message? And when we really talked with our advisory council about it, what we agreed is that if we leave it out, we're leaving out something that's fundamentally really important to us. And if we leave it out of the naming convention, does it get lost in the shuffle? Keeping it in the naming convention means that it's always part of the intention of this work.
It sounds like a good example for demonstrating that diversity, equity, inclusion work isn't the same everywhere. No. It depends on what matters to the community that is setting forth the intentions they've got. So what I can tell just from hearing you talk about just this decision about the naming of the work, that you're super enthusiastic about it. Why? Like, where is this coming from? Is there a strong sort of personal experience that you've had that's kind of got you to this place of loving the leadership, professional? What's going on?
You could say that. There is some history there. So, Gloria, I grew up in a very small farm town in the center of the heartland. And that town happened to also be the headquarters of the Klan, dating back into the late 1800s. In my lifetime, I vividly recall the Klan marching in parades.
As in the Ku Klux Klan.
As in the Ku Klux Klan with the white robes and the hoods and the whole nine yards. Where I can picture clear as day standing across the street from the Catholic Church watching the Ku Klux Klan walk down the street in the parade. I vividly remember in my lifetime crosses being burned in people's yards. In my lifetime, it's insanity. And I think when you grow up in an environment like that, which I'm happy to say was not in my household, but there was not a person of color anywhere in the town where I grew up. If you grow up in an environment like that, it's going to leave a mark. The question is, which mark is it going to leave? There are a lot of people who just kind of follow in the footsteps of whatever environment they were exposed to. And then there are some who say, yeah, that's not going to be me. I knew when I was very young, I could never live in an environment like that. I knew that was just not an environment for me. The environment that's created when there is such a spirit of racism and hatred is toxic, and it's an environment I want no part of.
It's often the case that people of goodwill, certainly people in the senior living industry, say that we want to do better, but I'm from Indiana, I'm from fill in the blank, someplace where they have not experienced much diversity of experiences or perspectives or identities. And there's some reluctance to want to sort of lean in and lead and try to create more inclusive environments just because they don't feel that they've had experience doing that. What would you say to those kinds of folks?
I would say find your courage. I remember having a conversation. We shared a post after the Tyree Nichols murder, and it got a lot of comments about it. And I remember having a conversation with an executive director who's white and is one of the kindest, most generous, thoughtful, respectful people I've ever known. And she said, I wrote a response, and then I wasn't sure if it was right, and I deleted it 3 times. It's like she wanted to say something, but she was so afraid of saying the wrong thing that she chose to say nothing. And there's so many opportunities for us to say something or to speak up or to take a stand or to interject our voice. But sometimes the fear of doing the wrong things prevents even the best intentions from actually happening. So find the courage to do it. My mom would say, do something even if it's wrong. And if it's wrong, own it. I think acknowledging that even if you're in a leadership role in this work, you don't have the answer. I have more questions probably because I've allowed myself to ask them, but it doesn't mean I have any more answers than anybody else. I just have to be willing to get out there and make a call.